Johann Wadephul, German Foreign Minister, Ukraine, which is heading towards a fourth winter of war, a fourth winter full of cold, darkness and death on the front, longs for peace. We all long for peace. But whether this wish will be fulfilled, whether there will at least be an immediate and unconditional ceasefire as a first step, we do not know today. Because it depends first and foremost on the aggressor, Russia. As Ukraine approaches its fourth winter in the ongoing war, the situation remains dire. The country, devastated by months of conflict, now faces a fourth brutal winter marked by the realities of war, cold, darkness and loss. The toll of war is being felt not just on the front lines, but across Ukrainian society. The hopes for peace, however, remain unfulfilled, and the question of whether an immediate ceasefire is possible remains unresolved. In this context, the focus of European officials, particularly in Germany, is on the role of Russia, which continues to wage war despite the heavy human and economic costs. Whether this wish will be fulfilled, whether there will at least be an immediate and unconditional ceasefire as a first step, we do not know today. Because it depends first and foremost on the aggressor Russia, Wadephul stated, highlighting the critical role Russia plays in the future of the conflict. While Ukraine and its allies are eager for peace, the path forward depends largely on Russian actions. The German foreign minister underscored the centrality of Russia's decisions in determining the course of events. He pointed out that the aggressor, Russia, must face consequences for its actions if there is any hope of halting the spread of this war. The conflict in Ukraine has drawn in multiple international players, with the European Union and NATO working to support Ukraine while deterring further Russian aggression. However, the dynamics of the conflict are complex, and there is no simple resolution in sight. Despite widespread calls for peace, the situation remains volatile, with no immediate end to the fighting. An aggressor like Russia must not be rewarded for its aggression, otherwise it will spread, Wadephul continued. His statement reflects a deep concern within European governments, particularly in Germany, that appeasing Russia in any way would only embolden further aggression. The experiences of history have shown that failing to stand firm against acts of aggression often leads to escalation, not peace. The European Union and NATO have been clear in their stance. Any peace process must be based on the principle of non-rewarding of aggression. For Ukraine, any ceasefire agreement must also take into account Russia's responsibility for the destruction and loss of life caused by the war. The ongoing war has left Ukraine in a state of perpetual crisis, and the civilian toll has been immense. Cities across Ukraine have been devastated by Russian artillery and airstrikes, with many regions facing widespread destruction. Entire communities have been displaced, and the human cost of the conflict continues to rise. As the fighting drags on into a fourth winter, millions of Ukrainians are living in fear and uncertainty. Winter conditions, including freezing temperatures and heavy snowfall, will exacerbate the suffering of those already living in areas heavily affected by the fighting. Yet, despite the immense challenges, the resilience of the Ukrainian people remains strong. There is a profound desire for peace among the population, but this desire is tempered by the reality of Russia's continued aggression. The ongoing conflict shows no signs of abating, and there are increasing concerns that the longer the war continues, the harder it will be to reach a negotiated settlement. As Wadephul noted, what remains is an imperial and aggressive Russia whose ambitions extend far beyond Ukraine. This statement highlights the broader geopolitical threat that Russia poses to Europe and the world. While the focus of much of the international community has been on the war in Ukraine, Wadephul's remarks underscore that Russia's ambitions may extend beyond its current actions in Ukraine. Russia's geopolitical goals may involve the destabilization of Europe as a whole, and this has significant implications for the future of NATO and the European Union. The European Union, NATO and other international stakeholders have recognized the need to prepare for future challenges. While the immediate concern is the war in Ukraine, there is a growing awareness that Russia may continue its aggressive stance beyond its borders. The threat posed by Russia is not only to Ukraine, but also to European security as a whole. Russia has largely geared its economy and its society towards war, Wadephul pointed out. This shift in Russia's domestic structure has profound implications for the broader geopolitical landscape. For the past several years, Russia's economy has been increasingly militarized, with significant portions of its budget being allocated towards defense and military operations. Russia's industrial base has been adapted to meet the demands of a prolonged military campaign, and the country's political leadership has framed the conflict as an existential struggle. The consequences of this militarization are evident in the scale and intensity of the war. Russia's strategy in Ukraine has involved large-scale mobilization of its armed forces, and the country has continued to recruit additional soldiers to support its military operations. More soldiers than it currently needs for its inhumane form of warfare in Ukraine, Wadephul observed. Despite the mounting casualties and the toll the war has taken on Russian society, the Russian government continues to pursue its military objectives without restraint. One of the most striking aspects of Russia's military strategy has been its continued recruitment efforts. Wadephul's comments reveal that the Russian military is recruiting soldiers at a rate that exceeds its immediate needs for the conflict in Ukraine. Almost one additional division per month is being recruited, he said. This highlights Russia's determination to sustain its military efforts, regardless of the costs. The war in Ukraine has become a major focus of Russia's domestic agenda, with the government willing to commit vast resources to sustain the fight. Wadephul's warning that Russia's ambitions extend far beyond Ukraine is not without merit. While the war in Ukraine remains the most pressing concern, the broader implications of Russian aggression are becoming increasingly clear. Russia's actions in Ukraine are seen as part of a larger strategy to assert its influence over neighbouring regions and potentially challenge the stability of Europe. As the war drags on, the possibility of a wider conflict involving NATO becomes a growing concern. The increasing militarization of Russian society and the expansion of its military capabilities present a clear and present danger to European security. Our intelligence services tell us emphatically Russia is at least creating the option of a war against NATO, Wadephul said. This statement underscores the serious threat that Russia poses not only to Ukraine but to the entire NATO alliance. The possibility of Russian aggression against NATO countries is no longer a distant hypothetical. It is something that must be prepared for. As Wadephul emphasized, the threat to our country from Russia is no longer a distant concern. It is already a reality today. This is a stark reminder of the immediate risks faced by European countries. While the focus of the conflict has been on Ukraine, the potential for Russian aggression against NATO members, particularly in the Baltic states and Eastern Europe, is growing. The alliance must be prepared for the possibility that Russia will seek to expand its military actions beyond Ukraine. Wadephul's comments also highlight the evolving nature of warfare in the modern world. Russia is increasingly blurring the line between war and peace with its hybrid warfare, he noted. This shift is significant, as it suggests that traditional concepts of war are being replaced by more complex and multifaceted forms of conflict. Hybrid warfare involves a combination of conventional military tactics, cyber attacks, propaganda, and other non-traditional methods of aggression. These tactics are designed to destabilize nations and create divisions within societies, all while avoiding the direct military confrontation that might trigger a full-scale war. The use of drones, airspace violations, and attacks on critical infrastructure are just a few examples of the hybrid tactics that Russia has employed in recent years. These actions are meant to undermine the stability of European nations without provoking a direct military response. Propaganda and fake news campaigns are also key elements of Russia's hybrid strategy, designed to influence public opinion and sow discord within NATO countries. In what leading think tanks call Phase Zero of a Russian war against NATO, Wadephul said, highlighting that Russia's tactics are already being employed to destabilize European societies before any formal military conflict occurs. As European nations face these threats, they are being forced to re-evaluate their defence strategies and readiness. NATO and the EU are working to strengthen their military capabilities and ensure that they are prepared for any eventuality, including potential Russian aggression against member states. However, the situation remains fluid, and the challenges posed by Russia's hybrid warfare are not easily countered. In addition to strengthening military forces, European nations will need to invest in cybersecurity, counterintelligence and information warfare to combat the full spectrum of threats posed by Russia. As tensions continue to rise, the international community remains focused on the war in Ukraine and the broader security implications for Europe. The future of the conflict remains uncertain, and the potential for further escalation remains a constant concern. While European leaders continue to push for peace, the reality of the situation is that Russia's ambitions extend far beyond Ukraine, and the risk of further conflict remains a critical issue for global security. The war in Ukraine is far from over, and the growing threat from Russia's imperial ambitions presents a challenge that will require continued vigilance, cooperation and resolve from the international community.